Welcome to our video on the impact of climate change on indigenous communities and their livelihoods. Today, we will delve into the profound challenges faced by these communities as they navigate the effects of climate change on their traditional land, food systems, and health. We'll explore how environmental shifts are not only disrupting their livelihoods but also threatening their cultural identity and resilience. Join us as we highlight the ways in which indigenous populations are responding to these challenges and fighting for their rights in an increasingly uncertain world. 1. Traditional land and resource rights. Climate change is not just an environmental issue, it is a profound threat to the traditional lands and resources of indigenous communities. These lands are not merely territories, they are the lifeblood of cultural practices and livelihoods that have been passed down through generations. As climate change progresses, many indigenous lands are undergoing transformations that threaten their very existence. Rising temperatures, changing precipitation patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events are eroding these lands. This erosion disrupts the delicate balance that indigenous communities have maintained with nature, affecting their ability to farm, hunt, and gather sustainably. The loss of these lands means a loss of identity and heritage that is deeply tied to the earth they have stewarded for centuries. 2. Disruption of food systems. The disruption of food systems is a harsh reality faced by indigenous communities in the wake of climate change. Local ecosystems, which have supported traditional food sources, are being altered at an alarming rate. Fish populations are dwindling as water temperatures rise, and game animals are migrating to cooler climates, leaving indigenous hunters with fewer options. Native plants, which are crucial for indigenous diets, are disappearing or becoming less productive due to changing rainfall and temperature patterns. This disruption is not just about food, it is about survival. For many indigenous communities, food sources are deeply intertwined with cultural practices and spiritual beliefs. The decline in these resources threatens not only physical nourishment but also cultural continuity. 3. Increased vulnerability to natural disasters. Indigenous communities often find themselves at the mercy of natural disasters, and climate change is amplifying this vulnerability. Many of these communities reside in areas that are particularly susceptible to floods, wildfires, and other catastrophic events. As climate change intensifies, these disasters become more frequent and severe, posing a significant threat to the safety and stability of indigenous peoples. The destruction of homes, infrastructure, and lands not only disrupts daily life but also erodes the social and cultural fabric of these communities. Without robust disaster preparedness and response mechanisms, indigenous communities face an uphill battle in recovering from such events. 4. Cultural loss. The loss of biodiversity due to climate change spells cultural loss for indigenous communities. These communities have rich traditions and spiritual beliefs tied to specific plants, animals, and ecosystems. As these species and ecosystems disappear, so too do the cultural practices that rely on them. Traditional medicines made from native plants become harder to produce, and cultural ceremonies centered around particular animals may no longer be possible. This loss is not only a blow to cultural identity but also to the spiritual well-being of indigenous peoples. It is a silent erosion of knowledge and practices that have sustained communities for millennia. 5. Limited adaptation resources. Many indigenous communities find themselves ill-equipped to adapt to the rapidly changing climate. Access to resources and support for climate adaptation is often limited, leaving these communities to fend for themselves. Without adequate funding, technology, or infrastructure, implementing adaptive measures becomes an insurmountable challenge. The lack of governmental support and recognition of indigenous knowledge further compounds this issue. Indigenous peoples have long been stewards of the land, possessing invaluable insights into sustainable living. However, without the necessary resources to act on this knowledge, adaptation efforts remain stifled, and communities remain vulnerable. 6. Health impacts. The health of indigenous populations is increasingly at risk due to climate change. Rising temperatures lead to heat stress, while poor air quality exacerbates respiratory problems. The spread of diseases, once confined to specific regions, is now reaching Indigenous communities previously untouched by such illnesses. These health impacts are not just physical but also mental, as the stress and anxiety of living in an uncertain environment take their toll. Access to healthcare is often limited in these communities, making it difficult to address these burgeoning health issues effectively. The compounding effects of climate change on health create a cycle of vulnerability that is challenging to break. 7. Resistance and resilience. Despite the challenges posed by climate change, Indigenous communities are not passive victims. They are at the forefront of climate activism, advocating for their rights and sustainable practices. Indigenous peoples are calling for the protection of their lands and the recognition of their traditional knowledge in combating climate change. Through grassroots movements and international forums, they are raising awareness and pushing for policy changes. The resilience of these communities is a testament to their strength and determination to protect their heritage. Their stories of resistance inspire others to join the fight against climate change, ensuring that their voices are heard on a global stage.